What up, y'all? I'm Dr. CBS here with Doc Jab, and you are tuned into episode 12 of The Last Dope Intellectual. So, Jared, it is 4/21/20, a funny day. We got so much to shoot the shit about, and I like that you got power on your shirt. I'm rolling with
Africa joint on it.
I'm rolling with the Radical Black Women shirt, Marsha P. Johnson, Harriet Tubman, and I put this on actually because I was watching the morning show. And Ieli was talking about Harriet Tubman. So I was like, let me throw my sweatshirt on. Like, I caught the spirit. And so I thought
did the good libations this morning. It was dope. Yeah.
It was so dope. All right. So first and foremost, Patrisse Cullors was interviewed by your boy, Mark Lamont Hill, about the controversy surrounding her, right? And so the interview, so I guess on Mark Lamont Hill's, he has a night show.
Yeah, this was something new. I'm not aware of this, but it was something on the Black News channel.
Okay, and we can probably share the link in the show notes in the description or whatever. And so he essentially was interviewing her about all the controversy around her 4 homes and, I guess her discretionary spending, and, was really giving her a chance to explain herself. And so, there was some tears that came up toward the end about basically her getting doxxed because people were showing the homes that she lived in. And even though they weren't showing addresses, she was saying people can figure out where she lives. And, she made the point that she did not draw a salary from the Black Lives Matter Global Network, although I think there was some other report saying that she had received as much as $3 million from her position in the Black Lives Matter Global Network. And she said it's from her. She's a professor, apparently. She's got lucrative book deals. She got a YouTube deal, and she's a TV show or a producer, she said, and that's where her money comes from. She goes on to say, that Black women who make money take care of their families. And that's exactly what she's doing. And that she doesn't think, she thinks activists should make a living wage. Now, I don't know if a living wage means millions of dollars, right? We know it ain't $15 an hour, but I don't know if it's millions, but she said that activists and organizers deserve to make a living wage. Okay. And that, essentially I interpreted something that she said to be her taking care of her family is sort of a manifestation of us taking care of the Black community, right? It's what we do in our community, which to me was a little bit, it reminds me of the managerial model. I think it's important that we understand the function of like the Black managerial class, which is precisely number 1, to represent the race, and number 2, to manage dissent and to set the agenda. And the reason why it reminded me of the managerial function, of the function of the Black managerial class is because what happens to that class and how that class lives their life is supposed to be representative of how we live our lives. And so their success transfers to our success, irrespective of our material conditions, irrespective of what we want, irrespective of how we want to live our lives and what our day-to-day realities are. The health of the managerial class represents the health of the race. And I just got those vibes from what she was saying. But what did you think about it? What did you think about that interview?
I thought it was, never mind my politics or my particular criticism of Black Lives Matter or Patrisse or anybody else. It was, the interview itself was horrible. It was it was among the most disingenuous, commercial style corporate media presentations and fraudulent discussions that I've seen in recently. I mean, it bothered me tremendously. And I say that having, I've known, and we don't know each other well. We've floated in similar circles here and there, Mark Lamont Hill and myself. I was just on his program for Al Jazeera. He has a program on Al Jazeera, and he invited me and your guest for today, Dr. Ransby, to talk about reparations. a segment I still can't wait to talk about at some point. But anyway, but the interview was just anyway. But the interview is objectively horrible for no other reason than first of all, she reframed, in addition to what you said, Patrisse and Mark allowed the conversation to be framed entirely as centering around the criticism she's received as coming from the white right, the white supremacist right.
Yep, a right-wing attack, exactly, as if no other people were critiquing her. I mean, they did mention the left critique, right, that there was a left critique, and she said that she respects the grounded critique, but it really was conflated. Yes, so sorry.
But even that was disingenuous because the left critique was because, first of all, I watched the entire thing because from the beginning when they framed it as a white supremacist, white right critique, I wanted to make sure, because I immediately was blown away by that and frustrated by that. So I wanted to make sure I saw that they never corrected that, and they never did, because the left critique that he mentions is that vague, erroneous, empty, never attributed, never discussed claim that because she's a Marxist, her use of money and her accumulation of private wealth and homes and all of that would be seen by the radical left as anti-Marxist. Right. So they never, again, so you have to come to Black Power Media to hear the origins of where that trained Marxist phrase came from, which was an interview with me that never gets attributed, and the history never discusses how that came to be. So you have to go to us to see that. But then they never actually get to what we have also done here at BPM on your show, on mine, and on Luke Mon Nation, and Renegade Culture for that matter, which is where the Black left, the Black grassroots working class in the streets activist left has its set of critique and criticism that is never involved in this conversation and was not brought up at all in this discussion with Mark and Patrisse. So they never mentioned the BLM 10 or the group out of the West Coast that came out with a very loud and well-organized statement. We can link to that as well, again, as we've done in previous discussions. So they never talk about the fact that the criticism was Patrisse's support of the Democratic Party, which was an expressed no from everybody on the ground. They didn't talk about the development of PACs for those parties. They didn't talk about the fact that, as she said, look, we just got this money last summer and we started to redistribute it, and people need to basically slow your roll. But the BLM 10 in their statement point out the fact that none of their chapters had been receiving support from the leadership since 2013. So this is not just something in response to the $90 million. This is a problem of redistribution of funds and support going back now 8 years. But by framing it that way, they present it as if anyone who is critical of Patrisse is supportive of the white right and white supremacy or misogynoir. And as was the case with a friend of mine on Instagram, and we had to have an exchange about this. I'm saying that is just a flawed and fraudulent approach to the whole conversation. So that I was terribly bothered by that interview.
Yeah, and the other thing too is that it all seemed to be, an attack on her. And she mentioned it's not just her, but then nobody else was mentioned, right? So ultimately, it was as if an attack on her, and it's also like she conflated herself with the movement, because an attack on her, all of it was ipso facto an attack on the movement, right? And an attack on her was an attempt to delegitimate the movement, as opposed to, no, an attack on you is an attack on you. And it's not even an attack. It is a call for you to be accountable and to be transparent. And then also just, to kind of own your stuff. If you have many multi-million-dollar homes, right, wrong, or indifferent, that's going to illegitimate you from you presenting yourself as somebody who is rooted in a sort of grassroots mode of organizing, or who has a particular politic. And so it's not because she's a quote unquote trained Marxist. It's just like, if it is that you have, if your goal is to build up movements, is to fund, it's to provide resources for the movement, self-aggrandizement is not it, in my perspective, right? And even if you're taking care of your family, you have to take care of your family in multi-million-dollar homes. Like that, it just seemed like, whatever work she had done previously or, you know, whatever, you know, clout she has as a quote unquote founder she tried to use it as cover for the fact that it's like, you're trying to build up your class position, period. Like, that's what you're doing. And I just feel like there's no acknowledgement or no accountability for that. And it's like, that's what you're doing. That's what you're doing. But you're still trying to position yourself as a sort of, you know, a working class of the people type of person. And then there are all of these defenders, like Black women can't have shit, and, you know, Black, you know, making it seem as if it's just because of her race and gender, as opposed to the way that she's oriented herself as an organizer and as an activist, you know? And so it's just, it's a bad, like, I was seeing an exchange between Todd, Stephen Burrows, and somebody else on this score. And I was just like, I don't even know why Todd's engaging this. This is silly.
Todd, my man Todd, man, people don't want it with him. We call him 228 for a reason. And you know, it has to do with, anyway, it's an inside joke, but the man is brilliant. But sometimes we get caught up in silliness online. But look, I also didn't like the way that Patrisse dismissed the claims of people doing work on the ground, wanting support and some of that money as charity. She said, we don't do charity. We're a grant making or a body. You know, so which I immediately started. So now you're now going to be the Ford Foundation in relationship to Black struggle. Now is that the approach you want to? Similarly, when we talked to Kamal Franklin about community movement builders, and he talks about they purchase houses as a community so that people who are doing activism can live, you know, with low rents in those communities to do work for I don't hear that version of approach to property procurement in this BLM plan. So to her point, you know, they haven't finished outlining everything and putting everything out. So maybe we'll be pleasantly surprised with some radical programming coming. But that interview, if we're just judging that interview, it has to be judged negatively. There's really no other way to really look at it. Even if you want to support her or Mark politically, the interview objectively was bad. They needed to do a better job of making their own argument, never mind convincing the rest of us that we're wrong. Yeah,
PR. So anyway, the Derek Chauvin verdict came in yesterday, and he was found guilty on all counts. And the liberals wasted no time in celebrating and this triumph for democracy, this triumph for justice, this triumph for America. And so I, you know, had a field day on Twitter trying to tell people this ain't justice. This is, you know, a particular retribution toward him. It was a system saving itself. They sacrificed this person in order to make it seem as if his actions were aberrant, as opposed to very much on par with the system of policing itself. And also, it's a way for liberals to punish, to feel righteous in their disdain for and support for punishment of protests. Right? Because it's like, so in there, this is what I think is going to happen, right? The demand is like, no justice, no peace, right? And in their mind, since justice was meted out, now they deserve peace, right? So like, why are you still in the streets? Why are you still protesting? Why are you still threatening their property, right? You got your justice now, you know. And so when the police continue to brutalize, the National Guard continue to pepper spray and otherwise, you know, mete out extraordinary violence on protesters, they can be righteous in their support of that because there was justice. What more do you want from us, right? So, it's interesting to see it unfold. And then the other thing that I talked about was, I was like, I can't wait to see this particular genre of writing that is the diversity email from these college administrators, right? Because of course they're going to put out a statement in truth. And I was like, I know it's going to be something like, justice was served, but we have more work to do, or we want to renew our commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion. And sure enough, people started posting the email, which came like 2 hours after the verdict. And it was always something along those lines. And so history doesn't repeat itself, but it rhymes.
We got our statement, our administrative statement, university statement on the Chauvin trial. And yeah, it was anyway. Listen, like others have said about a number of things, police terrorism is not a bug, it's a feature. So this is not an aberrant occurrence. And of course, we didn't even get to the verdict before the police somewhere else killed Ma'Khia Bryant. They've already killed young brother Toledo. They've already killed Dante Wright. I mean, you know, right around the corner. I mean, and that's just in the last, what, few days or whatever. Like, we're not even, you know, so these can't be seen as victories. That was my only note on this issue. This is, and it's clear to, you know, for anyone, even a little bit of the trial that I watched, and certainly in interviewing people, you know, like you know, Mel Reeves and others about it who were watching very closely, they threw him under the bus. The institution itself gave us Chauvin with the idea of just what you're talking about, that they'll be able to go right back to business as usual, just minus one player. And you know.
Yeah, for people who are claiming this is a deterrent, including your boy Mel, who said this morning on the morning show, like, you know, officers will think twice. If it serves any message at all, it's like, don't kneel on somebody's neck for 9 minutes on tape. That's a very specific lesson that has nothing to do with like policing at all. So like, that's fucking bullshit. You know, so yeah. So anyway. Interested to see what folks are thinking about these two issues that we shot the shit about in the chat. All right, y'all. So I'm bringing back History of the Present, which of course is a segment where I read a quote and then talk about its resonance for the present. And this week I am pulling from this text, "We Charge Genocide: The Historic Petition to the United Nations for Relief from a Crime of the United States Government Against the Negro People," submitted to the United Nations in 1951. And I just want to read this short piece that talks about policing. And I'll talk about why in a second, but it's obvious to anybody who has any sort of pays any attention to the news, right? So here's the quote. "There was once a time when racist violence had its center in the South. But as the Negro people spread to the North, East, and West, seeking to escape the Southern hell, the violence, impelled in the first instance by economic motives, followed them. Its cause also economic. Once most of the violence against Negroes occurred in the countryside, but that was before the Negro immigrations of the 20s and 30s. Now there is not a great American city, from New York to Cleveland to Detroit, from Washington, the nation's capital, to Chicago, from Memphis to Atlanta or Birmingham, from New Orleans to Los Angeles, that is not disgraced by the wanton killing of innocent Negroes. It is no longer a sectional phenomenon. Once the classic method of lynching was the rope. Now it is the policeman's bullet. To many an American, the police are the government, certainly its most visible representative. We submit that the evidence suggests that the killing of Negroes has become police policy in the United States, and that police policy is the most practical expression of government policy." So as we know, We Charge Genocide is this petition that was filed to the United Nations in order to internationalize the Black struggle in the United States, because obviously Black people could get no relief from the very government that was terrorizing them. And what this quote conveys, and I think the way it resonates to the president, is that the police are an occupying force, and they are the most close expression of the government to the people. And so, speaking, you know, going back to the Chauvin verdict that we were discussing and shoot the shit, holding one police officer accountable does nothing for the system, because as this quote conveys, the police are expression of the government. And so to get rid of policing, to rid our nation of the violence of policing, we need to not necessarily overthrow the government by force or violence, but we have to restructure the system itself. We have to dismantle the system itself, because it's not a bad apple thing. And I wish people would leave the apples out of it. Like, let us just have our apples, because this shit ain't about no bad apples. It's about the ways that persons who are deputized to uphold the law, to enforce law and order, think that they can terrorize people take their shit, because they also rob a lot of people, and kill them with impunity. And indeed, and in fact, that is generally speaking how they operate. And so holding Chauvin, quote unquote, accountable, which is just, you know, retribution, is actually an aberration of the system, right? It doesn't show the success of the system. It doesn't show any mercy. It doesn't show any justice. It simply shows that, this one person out of the thousands who kill, murder, terrorize, torture, and otherwise harm racialized and poor communities, that those people don't get held accountable. This is just one. And so this was written in 1951, right? That is what, 70 years ago. And the people who wrote this, it was spearheaded by William Patterson, him and his comrades in the Civil Rights Congress. They saw this in 1951. And we're still having the same problem, the same interaction, the same problem with policing, which to me says it is the system itself. It is police themselves. It is the way that the government empowers these people to, quote unquote, uphold the law, which is really to uphold the sanctity of private property in the interest of the ruling elite, that as long as that is the role and function of the police, we will continue to have the same thing over and over. And so at some point, we have to break the cycle of police killing, protest, feigned outrage, sometimes some superficial change, sometimes none at all, until the next police killing. Like, this cannot be the way we struggle. This cannot be the way that we articulate our demands for justice and for Black liberation and socialism. Quite frankly, there has to be another way, because the violence, the terrorism, the will to murder is baked into the system of policing. And so I feel like the writers of We Charge Genocide recognize that, which is why they moved to internationalize the struggle, but also to connect it to the Vietnam War, or the Korean War at that time. So they connected the situation of African Americans to the Korean War. They moved to mobilize other nations to condemn the United States and to hold the United States accountable for this crime of genocide. And so we need to be thinking in that way as well. Because, it's abolish the police, period. The conviction of one cop ain't doing shit for us. And so we cannot pretend that that's justice. All right, y'all, we have a variation on In These Tweets this week called In These Bookmarks, because I don't know about y'all, but I very heavily use the bookmark function on my Twitter. And so I have different genres of things that I bookmark, basically. And so I just wanted me and Jared to have this discussion. But Jared, you actually misunderstood what I meant by In These Bookmarks. So do share.
So I think we just have to call it an old person's moment. Because when you said the word bookmark, I went like old school bookmark. So I thought you were saying, in my mind, I'm saying, oh, this is a great idea. She's saying, go to the nearest book, grab it off the shelf. Because I know, like with me and a lot of us, we just leave bookmarks in places, dog ears, whatever, something, come back. And what is bookmark? So I just happened, because I know we had talked about him recently, and this book is always nearby, Ron Walter's book on analysis of modern Afrocentric political movements and, Pan-Africanism in the diaspora. And I just had this bookmark, and I was looking at all my old notes and scribblings and whatnot from, and it just said in here, Black power to us means that Black people see themselves as part of a new force, sometimes called the Third World. What we see our struggle is closely related to liberation struggles around the world. We must hook up with these struggles. So that was what he was quoting right there from Pan-Africanism, Kwame Ture, right there in my bookmark. So anyway, that's what I thought you meant, but clearly.
Well, let me just say, I also have some shit bookmarked. I was reading Black Awakening in Capitalist America. I have several bookmarks and side tabs. These side tabs are from
wow.
But what I bookmarked recently was on page 135. It was talking about the Newark Rebellion. I think I had turned to this because of some conversation I was having with Todd Stephen Burrows, but it's about the Newark Rebellion. And then there's something in here about, so chief spokesman for the Nationalists was poet-playwright Leroy Jones. That's Amiri Baraka. During the rebellion, Jones was beaten and arrested on charges of being in illegal possession of weapons. A few days later, on July 22nd, he told reporters, quote, again and again, we have sought to plead through the reference of progressive humanism. Again and again, our plaints have been denied by an unfeeling, ignorant, graft-ridden, racist government, end quote. Now he added, quote, we will govern ourselves or no one will govern Newark, New Jersey, end quote. Within a few months, Jones's plans would become clear. So anyway.
And good thing so much has changed since that was written.
So much has changed. We are at the promised land, my brother. All right, y'all. So my first genre of bookmark is goofy shit or shit I want to critique later. So one of the things that I had bookmarked was this article from Fox News that said Columbia University hosting 6 separate graduation ceremonies based on income level, race, and ethnicities. And so basically, you know, at many colleges and universities, there's these like Black graduations. Sometimes they'll have like a Latinx one, whatever. And so it's Fox News, typical of Fox News, is making a big deal about this, making it seem as if it's like forced segregation of people, when really it's like they have main graduations and then you can choose to participate in these ethnic-based graduations. I don't know about no class. I've never been to the poor man's graduation. Like, I ain't heard of that one, so I don't know if they're exaggerating.
Yeah, that's new to me too. I've never heard that one either.
Period. And so, but it was.
So what does that mean? They just have like paper plates and stuff, and it's like low budget. Is that what they're saying? I
don't. It's, you know, Fox News. Who fucking knows? But anyway, so that was one thing that I had bookmarked because I wanted to probably go off about this in some segment or something. But so that's one genre of bookmark that I have among the hundreds of bookmarks that that I tend to have. So what about you, Jared? What's something you have bookmarked on Twitter?
So mine are, you know, I don't have nearly that many. And in fact, mine are, you know, pretty easily, you know, we could just quickly go through mine even real quick. I mean, I just kept this one here from Killer Mike saying he loved my book and then he learned some stuff. I couldn't help that. I should have worn my petty shirt today for that one. This one to me is a little more important to save your discussion with Barbara Smith at the Schomburg and Dr. Kelly, Robin Kelly, you know, just something worthy of saving. And then this other one, we can come back to some more in a second, but I have to say, you know, I don't know what level of contradiction this reaches, but my fandom of Monique has continued to rise as she has both challenged Oprah and you know, the Black filmerati for you know, keeping her out and punishing her for being a loud, proud spokesperson for her, you know, what she should get and all that. And in this clip here, she goes at Angela Yee, who tries to come at her basically saying, you know, aren't you just being a little hostile, a little loud, Miss Black woman? And she was like, hold on here, sister girl. You've experienced your own problems too. Stop fronting like this is just something I'm making up. So I was like, yeah, I you know, anyway, anyway, I appreciate Monique and this little struggle she's been waging with her Black classmates, so to speak. So those are just a couple.
I mean, I like the Parkers, but I don't got no dog in that fight.
I'm not talking about the show like that. Yeah, I hear you. It's just a little trifling thing I like to look at. Anyway,
we all have our thing. Okay, so y'all, like, I'm a little bit, I won't say I'm ashamed to admit this. It is what it is. I have like a genre of bookmark that's kind of like valid dashes. I call them valid dashes, where sometimes, you know, I just like to kind of bookmark sometimes when people say nice things or supportive things. Cause like in the academy and just in this world, people shit on you all the time and like make it seem as if like nothing you do either matters or is good or is worthwhile, or like you ain't shit, you ain't never been shit, and you ain't never gonna be shit with your leather wearing in the summertime ass. That's waiting to exhale. But anyway, and so sometimes I just like to bookmark nice things. And so this was a tweet from the comrade No Name, because I was telling her, you know, I liked Rainforest. And so she said, you know, I read your articles, then write songs. Thank you. And I just thought that was so, first of all, I just thought it was an expression of mutual comradeship. Like, you know, we're thinking on the same plane. So sometimes we read the same things, or sometimes I listen to her music while I'm writing. Apparently she reads some stuff that I write and writes music. And I just thought that was just like some Black radical connection there. But it also was just a kind thing to say. And so, you know, I replied with my prayer hands and my green heart. The green heart is special. Everybody don't get the green heart. The green heart means something to me. So anyway, so that was another thing that I have bookmarks. And sometimes if I'm feeling a little bit blue, I have like screenshots in my phone. I have like a file. I just do because, you know, sometimes when I'm feeling a little bit blue or just like, what is you doing? Like, you're whack. You haven't done shit today. Do some work. Then I just read them and I'm like, okay, we out here. So
hey, that's very real, because people, I mean, this whole thing we hear all the time, people, you know, give people their flowers while they're here and stuff like that. It is real. And I think a lot of times when people see the end product of an academic or someone proudly promoting their work or talking about their work, they forget about how many darts and arrows have been flung at them on the way to getting there. And all the just quiet hate that institutions offer, and all. I mean, there's a lot that people go through. So anyway, I appreciate that. That's right on. All
right, what's your next set?
I'll just wrap up mine. I just got a couple of mine. Yeah. I'll just wrap up mine here real quick because on my pettiness, I kept this one here which is actually me. I'm bookmarking my own tweet. Just to bookmark
my own shit too. That's another genre of tweet. Bookmarking my own shit. Yeah.
Yeah. Is that a genre? Right. My own bookmarks, because I wanted to remember. I wanted to document the moment that unfortunately my man Dr. Carr misrepresented my argument on the Karen Hunter show, and they never responded. So I was like, when I was like, I just like you got it wrong, and I would love a chance for us to discuss it. And you know, and it just didn't go anywhere. So anyway, but that was one thing I wanted to remember. And also, you know, to your point, somewhat similarly, this wasn't you know, Derek Hamilton sending me something nice, you know, about my work, but it was in the aftermath of him doing a lot of off the record things that even prominently well-placed academics who have certain I don't know, platforms or I don't know what is the word I'm looking for. They have a status in the world. They do things. Purchase. Thank you. They do things behind the scenes to help people out. And he looked out for me, and then came on to a university event that I had that I really appreciate. And then right here, just real quick. Yeah. Go ahead.
Was this before or after the contract with Black America?
This was.
Because he wrote the introduction, y'all.
Yeah, he did. He wrote this was right about, because it was October of 2020. I think this is right after he did that. Because is this because we talked about it. I'm maybe confused. Is this the same one? You talking about the one that Ice Cube wrote for Trump? Ice Cube wrote for Trump. Yeah, he wrote that. He did write that. And we did talk a little bit about that. And it is. I was just curious. All right. Hey, look. I was just curious. No shade. Derek and I are not on the same page politically, but he is a good brother who I think, I don't know, he looked out for me. I think he does good work. We don't agree necessarily on that particular thing. We don't also agree, for instance, on the support for Biden or Bernie Sanders even. So, you know, there's areas of disagreement, but, you know, and we talked about it in that piece. People can go check it out. It came up, but anyway. The last one here, I just want to shout out at least the person that goes by Ellis Septima Hamer. I don't really know this person other than they took a class while at Wayne State University with my man Ali Johnson, and bigged him up, and they put out some of my favorite tweets all the time. And this is just one that I wanted to save in defense of those who are saying, look, I'm not voting for either one of these fools, and I'm not going to be beaten up for it in the process. So shout out to Ellis Septima Hamer and to that sentiment, who you know, that I wanted to just save and just, you know, be reminded of as one in that camp who says, look, I'm not voting for any of these fools, and nobody's going to beat me up for it. So
pop quiz. Who is his name riffing off of? Ella, Septima Haynes.
Well, Ella Baker, Septima Clark, and Fannie Lou.
Period. I just gotta give the Black Radical quiz sometimes. Just,
Yeah, and as soon as you started, I was like, am I gonna have the moment of recall? Because it's not always for me an issue of knowing, it's an issue of what will I remember in the moment on the spot. And there's one. There's one that haunts me on that note. I interviewed for a university project years ago the comedian Amanda Seales, and in this interview, she came through. She came through and she quizzed me on, because she was saying that Kendrick Lamar is a more important and better rapper than Rakim. And I was like, I refused. And then she said, well, spit a Rakim verse, because nobody knows Rakim verses and they all know. And I couldn't on the spot do it. And it's not because I don't know Rakim verses or don't know them very well. It's just that in that moment, I couldn't do it. Now, thankfully, the tape disappeared. But so there's no evidence that this happened other than me sharing it here. But it's just about an issue of moment of recall. But I do remember that, and I failed miserably. So when you started to do that, I was like, is this about to be another one of those moments? And I would have been for sure fried up on that one. So anyway.
Yeah. Well, your neuroplasticity needs work, my guy, because you be forgetting a lot of stuff. And I'm just like, Jared, you about to be 50, not 150. Like, let's go, Benjamin Button. Like, you got to do better. So anyway.
I even had to look up that word. When you said it to me, I was like, what's neuroplasticity? I was like, yeah. You're right.
All right, y'all. So that was our segment of In These Bookmarks. I think it's fun. So hopefully this will encourage Jared to use his bookmark function more so that we can have a more robust conversation, because I probably have hundreds at this point. But
and Twitter bookmarks, not these.
Yeah. But read too, bookmark shit too. So I hope y'all enjoyed that little segment. All right, y'all. I have such an exciting, amazing, wonderful interview today with Dr. Barbara Ransby. And so I am going to read this very impressive bio, and then we'll hop right into the conversation. So Dr. Barbara Ransby is the John D. MacArthur Chair and Distinguished Professor in the Department of Black Studies, Gender and Women's Studies and History at the University of Illinois at Chicago. She also directs the campus-wide Social Justice Initiative, a project that promotes connections between academics and community organizers doing work on social justice. She is a graduate of Columbia University and the University of Michigan, where she was a Mellon Fellow. Dr. Ransby is the author of 2 award-winning books, Ella Baker and the Black Freedom Movement, A Radical Democratic Vision, that came out in 2003, and Aslanda, The Large and Unconventional Life of Mrs. Paul Robeson, which dropped in 2013. She is also the author of a 3rd book published in August 2018 entitled Making All Black Lives Matter, Reimagining Freedom in the 21st Century. The Ella Baker book was the recipient of 8 National Book Awards and recognitions, including the Liberty Legacy Award from the Organization of American Historians, the Joan Kelly Prize from the American Historical Association, and the James A. Rowley Prize, also from the AHA. In 2017, Dr. Ransby was honored as one of the top 25 women in higher education by the publication Diverse Issues in Higher Education. Yeah, y'all know my reading be terrible, but let me keep going. She is also a recipient of the 2018 Angela Y. Davis Prize from the American Studies Association for Scholarship and Service of the Public Good. In 2020, Dr. Ransby received 2 honors. She was elected as a fellow to the Society of American Historians and received one of the inaugural Freedom Scholars Awards from the Marguerite Casey Foundation and Group Health Foundation for Social and Economic Justice Scholarship. She is also the editor-in-chief of Souls, a critical journal of Black politics, culture, and society. Very dope journal. I have 2 articles in there. And is a member of the editorial working group of the London-based journal Race and Class, and the editorial advisory board for the Justice, Politics, and Power book series at the University of North Carolina Press. She served as president of the National Women's Studies Association from 2016 to 2018. Dr. Ransby publishes regularly in popular venues, which include Dissent, In These Times, Color Lines, The Nation, The Boston Review, Truth Out, and The New York Times. Dr. Ransby is not only a historian and writer, but also a longtime activist. She was deeply involved in the anti-apartheid Free South Africa movement in the 1980s and later co-founded a number of organizations, including the Ella Baker Nelson Mandela Center, Ella's Daughters, and African American Women in Defense of Ourselves. She is a founding member of the National Organization of Scholars for Social Justice and works closely with the Movement for Black Lives and the multiracial coalition, The Rising Majority. Finally, she serves on the board of directors of the Woods Fund of Chicago and the grassroots Chicago-based Equity and Transformation, a group that supports formerly incarcerated persons and those working in the informal economy. Woo, that's a bio for you. So welcome, Dr. Ransby.
That bio makes me sound old. You wouldn't think I was only 25. But hey,
it makes me sound distinguished. I'm like, okay. Man, that's goals right there. Okay. So my first question for you is, so you're at the helm of two projects that bring together scholarship, culture, work, activism, and social and racial justice. I'm referring to the Scholars for Social Justice and the Portal Project. So what was the impetus for these projects and what do you hope to accomplish with them?
Well, thank you for that. I don't know if I would say the helm, maybe at the center with other people. So Scholars for Social Justice, myself, Kathy Cohen, Adam Getachew, Sarah Haley, Devarian Baldwin, Dale Gore. A number of people have been involved in that project. And basically, it kind of started with the impetus to be in service to movements. And to also underscore that universities don't own us. So it is deliberately kind of outside of the formal space of university. So often, our identity as people who do intellectual work, which many people do and don't get paid for, we get paid for some of it, gets captured by the university. So we wanted to say, like, how can the research that we do, the data we collect, the historical narratives we construct, also be in service to movements? And how can we learn from the intellectual and political work going on in movement spaces? So many of us, have been activists as well as researchers and scholars, for much of our careers. And so this was a way to kind of create that formal bridge. So that's Scholars for Social Justice. We started off with a reparations in higher ed working group. And I really want to hold up Devarian Baldwin's new book, In the Shadow of the Ivory Tower, which documents many of the sort of crimes of not only the neoliberal university, but the university project under racial capitalism. So, so our effort had been to talk about reparations in higher ed, and we're participating now in Abolition May, and just mad props to the people at UCLA who have supported the student organizing there and centered kind of abolitionist framework for the work that they're doing. So anyway, so that, so we, and I tell you how it came about, I'm notorious for asking people to sign stuff. It's like, this thing happened, y'all, let's just put his name down there. Here's some, they hit us this way. And I realize that those are not, major transformative things, but just that step of putting your name on the record to say, not on my watch, I'm not down with that. And to try to, do that in a collective way, I think, has been a useful intervention, but inadequate. But many of those lists are the lists that we kind of drew upon for the Scholars in Social Justice. And the Portal Project, and I promise not to be so long-winded with the answers because I know we only have a half an hour. But the Portal Project is, I got the award that you mentioned from the Casey Foundation, which just kind of dropped out of the air. And
congratulations, that's amazing though.
Yeah, it was just kind of like, okay, so what should we do with that? And so we decided to, put those resources toward this project, which is a 2-year project bringing together 100 activists, artists, and scholars to talk about critical questions of social transformation and revolution, and to use 3 points of entry: the struggle and debate around abolition, the struggle and debate around racial capitalism and economic justice, and the struggle and debate around climate justice. So, we have some fellows, Angela Davis, Robin Kelly, Kianga Yamada-Taylor, and Naomi Klein, who will be a catalyst for some of the work, but more importantly, we have about 20 activists who've made a deep commitment to the project. And then, as I said, a total group of 100 who we're going to invite into working groups and so forth. And we hope that you will be involved.
Of course, I will be there. That's so amazing. I love how you're bringing together these different elements who are often thought apart. And also, you know, just being at one of the, just full disclosure, one of the Portal Project meetings, your commitment to really breaking down those boundaries between like scholars / academics and activists and artists. So I'm really excited to see what comes out of these ongoing initiatives.
Yeah.
And then, okay, so you were also one of the founding members of one of my favorite organizations to study, which is the Black Radical Congress, founded in 1998. So in your estimation, first of all, can you speak a little bit about what the Black Radical Congress was and what, in your estimation, some of the successes and shortcomings were? And then if you can think a little bit about what are the difficulties of sustaining a multi-tendency organization?
Yeah, and you're sure we don't have 3 hours, we just have 30 minutes. So the BRC was very close to my heart, took a big chunk of my life. Mm-hmm. And it was 1998 was the culmination of a couple of years of discussion, debate, unity building, but really organized discussion and debate about what was needed. For me, an impetus for it was the Million Man March, which I was very critical of as a Black left feminist, which I felt celebrated kind of capitalism and patriarchy in 1995. And we talked, like that can't be the alternative that people see as a public presence of Black resistance, right? And so we began to pull together people who disagreed with each other, as you say, multi-tendency. So we had from, Cornel West at one point to Amiri Baraka to Jarvis Tyner, who was in the Communist Party. So it was a great array of people. I think it was important because from, people who would identify as revolutionary nationalists to people who were ardent Marxist and communist, built in communist organizations and socialist organizations, to have the conversation about how we came to our political views, to have conversations about where we disagree, to also recognize people as humans. We come into this work, nobody gets grand rewards for being a Black radical of any sort. So, so to ask questions across lines of difference, but then to understand that the differences are real. So, I think we were overly ambitious for what the Black Radical Congress could be. I think we didn't have a strong enough ideological grounding. I think also there were generational issues. And I often joke and say, I work with a lot of young people these days, and I try to be a well-behaved elder, which is to say I don't come in and say, listen to us because we've been around longer than you. And I also don't come in and say, here's the issues we've been fighting about for 40 years. Can y'all still fight about these? So I think that, had we respected some of the emergent young activists at that time, maybe we wouldn't have gotten mired in some of the longstanding debates and feuds and differences, within, and then to be less ambitious. Like it wasn't going to become a political party, right? There were too many ideological differences, but it could have become some sort of container for debate, right? And I think that's really important. And comradely debate. I hate sectarian left performance, where, I'm Blacker than you, I'm lefter than you. No, these are ideas, people, and nobody has all the answers. So let's get real about that. So walking into it with passion and humility is really important. And that's something that we often lack. So anyway, Bill Fletcher, Abdul Kalimat, Manning Marable, and Leith Mullings, both of whom have passed on, of course, we were kind of the core, I guess, founders. I don't even like that word. We were the people that were up the earliest and the latest for the longest, trying to jumpstart the thing. So Jamala Rogers and Bill have written about this more than I have, about kind of what some of the internal tensions and stresses were. Yeah, but it was important. And people I know you interviewed Boots, right? Like Boots was at the Congress, and people keep telling me years later, it was 2,000 people came to Chicago in 1998 for several days. And, we had international solidarity presence and all of that. But, it was both an event, but it was a process that extended both before and after.
I got you. Okay, so hopefully we can, learn from some of those lessons as we begin to build organizations and try to sustain institutions, because in the final analysis, the radical perspective is not that big within the Black community, within the society writ large. And so we have to figure out ways to come together because, the crisis is not lessening, it's deepening. So, so switching gears a little bit. So as I read in your bio, you wrote 2 path-breaking biographies of radical Black women, Ella Baker and the Black Freedom Movement, and Eslanda, The Large and Unconventional Life of Mrs. Paul Robeson. So what is important about the biography genre in telling or recuperating the stories of Black women? And then, and why did you choose to write about these 2 people in particular?
Yeah. Well, I've said a number of times, I think biography helps to put flesh on the bones of history, and so, we so are ready to heroicize people, deify people. We're looking for our messiahs and our saviors. And for me, biography for Ella Baker and Eslanda Robeson, both of whom were subjects that I respected, is to also say, they struggled to pay the bills. They had self-doubt. They were human beings in all the beautiful, flawed ways in which we are all human beings. And they still made extraordinary contributions. So to humanize subjects, particularly subjects that were, a part of an important radical tradition. I guess the other reason for me, biography is just an accessible genre. A lot of people who aren't academics read biography. I come from a working class family. My parents didn't go to high school, let alone college. And they could not figure out why I was in school for so long. They're like, baby, can't you just get a job? You're just writing that book for all these times. So I wanted something that people like them could read and find accessible and not just, look at it in, frustration. So I feel like biography is an accessible genre in that way. But I'm not, a biography for me is not to psychoanalyze the subject. It's not to dig up salacious details, but it's really how do we embed real flesh and blood individuals in a historical narrative? And particularly with these 2, to get to the second part of your question, how do we surface the contributions of radical Black women? Not just Black women. I mean, that's fine too. That's good too, and wonderful studies. But radical Black women get doubly marginalized, both in the narratives about African American history and the narratives about the predominantly white left. They just get left out. And Ella Baker and Eslanda Robeson, I think, were particularly powerful historical actors in very different ways. And, I learned a lot about them. I learned a little bit about me in taking that journey through their lives.
That's so interesting. Like I plan to write a biography about Doxy Wilkerson, like an intellectual biography. I'm going to do that. But then having written the foreword for the republication of Alpheus Hunton Unsung Valiant, I'm more and more drawn to write about Dorothy Hunton, namely because I cannot find her birth date or death date anywhere. And I have hit up Keith Gilliard, Gerald Horne, Mary Louise Patterson, so many people who would know, and we can't find it, which is just very intriguing because she wrote a biography of her husband, right? And she's all up in all of these organizations doing all this work. And it's like, well, where's Dorothy Hunton? And so it's just interesting how learning about other radicals too can bring you to a subject.
Yeah, so, absolutely. Well, you say you can't find her birth date, document. But, well, we can talk off. We don't have to talk now. But, it's funny how, census data, government documents before the internet and all, if people got misspelled names that just then they evaporate because somebody decided to change their name or, whatever, the spelling of their name. So, it's all kind of ways to lose people. And then sometimes we just have to say, this is what we know. I never found Ella Baker's marriage license, which was the document I was on a crusade to find. Then I decided, you know what? Actually, I can tell her story without that document.
Yeah. So that's the fun part about history, though, is like the discovery phase, Okay, thank you that was really illuminating. So this is a related question that is, I guess, more of an academic question. Like, so all of your major works, the 2 biographies, as well as Making All Black Lives Matter, Reimagining Freedom in the 21st Century, were published with top academic presses. And so was this a strategic decision, or how do you choose where to publish your work, and between, you know, doing a trade press or a popular press versus an academic press?
Well, the short answer is no, they were not strategic decisions. I have not made very many strategic career decisions, to tell you the truth. And sometimes younger scholars ask me, so what should I do? I'm like, I don't, you know, like,
yes,
go with what you believe, and also talk to yourself about what's most important. And the job was one part of it, you know, like I wanted to be in a city and this and that. The publisher was one part of it, because I wanted the books to reach an audience. I mean, I take a long time to write books. So, you know, unlike Gerald, who you mentioned, so I'm like, does he have another book? But anyway, I take a long time. And so I want people to read it. So a publisher that, at least an editor at a publication that gets it, that thinks it's important, that wants it to find an audience, I think that's important to me. And then, you know, you don't always have infinite choices. So University of North Carolina kind of fell in my lap. I loved Kate Torrey, who was the director of the press, you know, who was really a collaborator and a partner with me on my first book. The second book was Yale, which was a different experience. And, you know, I don't know, that sort of just happened too. I mean, you know, a lot of people weren't interested in Aslanda. And people kept mispronouncing her. What is her name? Her S who? And people just weren't interested in her. And I kept saying, she's not just Paul Robeson's wife. That's the whole point of the biography. So that was fewer choices. And the University of California, they just asked me, Rod Ferguson, I think, asked me, or, you know, somebody who was also publishing in the series, and it was supposed to be I thought of it as a booklet, and then it kind of just became more of a book. But and then I'm publishing. I decided to go with One World Publishers I'm doing a book which is tentatively titled "Are We Ready for a Revolution?" Which I'm excited about, and that's a different press too. But it has some wonderful editors there who are just super smart and mission driven, as they say, and I love that opportunity for kind of collaboration with smart, progressive editors, young people of color. Mm-hmm. So yeah, so that's kind of it. I should have a more I don't know, career savvy answer to that question, but I don't. You want your work to get out there, and I also should say this. You know, I try to be as collaborative as possible in my work. I ask lots of people to read it. In my last book, Making All Black Lives Matter, I talked a lot with movement people because I was involved. I was kind of like a participant observer, I guess. And I changed a lot of things about my approach to that book based on conversations with activists who were like, no, that's not the way it was. Or this is more important than that. And so I really respected them as kind of intellectual collaborators. So, yeah.
Yeah. So when you say a good editor, this is kind of off the cuff, but like when you say a good editor, like what makes a good editor? Because I know that there can be really terrible ones. I know that there can just be kind of like laissez-faire ones that just are not bad or good. They just there. And then there are people who really allow your project to flourish. So what are some things that make a good editor?
Yeah. I can answer that in lots of different ways, but let me just say, for me, it's someone who gets the work and the content. So we can have real discussions, right? And they're not having you write for an audience that you don't care about. So the audience that you're writing, that the editor gets and is committed to the audience that you're writing to, the editor understands to some degree the content and sees value in the content of what you're trying to document, argue, and frame. And that the person respects you and is prepared to be a collaborator, you know, rather than kind of give me 300 pages in 2 years or whatever. That kind of transactional, I'm not interested in that, you know. Yeah. But the person has to be invested enough in actually what you want to say and not just a product to actually bounce ideas off, to say, is this really what, to be a sounding board? Because, you can go down a rabbit hole of, one chapter where you can wander off of your path and you're talking about important things that have nothing to do with what you really are trying to say, and a reader can get lost. So an editor brings you back to that path because they know the path that you want to be on. I hope that's not too vague.
No, that's very helpful. I'm sort of, in that process now, so that's very helpful.
I appreciate your work so much, I have to say, and your voice and your fire.
Oh, so thank you. That is so kind. Thank you so much. I still have the book
called kind very often, so thank you.
You signed my Making All Black Lives Matter book at the University of Minnesota, and you put something about my fire in there too. So I was like, I must have an attitude or something.
Fire illuminates and it warms.
Oh yeah. Never mind. Okay, so
it doesn't just destroy things. It warms, it illuminates, it sustains us. So
thank you so much. Okay, so again, going back to your bio, you do a lot. So how do you balance producing academic and public scholarship, editing a top Black Studies journal, which I consider Souls to be, your organizing and activism, and institution building, which I think is something separate from organizing, or something, a different type of thing, related but different. And also, like, what are the types of problems that might arise working outside the academy when, often academia pushes you to try to be sort of ensconced in, or, focused on the ebony tower. But obviously, we as, Black radical scholars want to make an impact beyond the academy. So hopefully that's a coherent question.
Yeah. Well, I drink a lot of coffee, and and I stay up late. It is hard to do a lot of things. You're doing a lot. Everybody's doing a lot. There's a lot to do. And look, my parents did a lot too, and they got very little reward for it. I mean, at least we work, I read books and talk, and, I'm not shoveling coal or doing some really, really arduous work, 6-7 days a week. So I can't complain about being tired. But I think movement building is what I try to do more than institution building. And I think my approach to the academy is as an outsider within. I think we can't allow the academy to define us. It is flawed and problematic and grounded in, capitalist logics and the whole myth of meritocracy, which gets perpetuated through the institutions, help to give cover to the class hierarchies in our society. Looking at 18-year-old, here's a winner and a loser because they have a number on a test. You get a chance at a certain kind of job, and you are on your own in the informal economy. So I just try to keep that perspective. I also try to keep space for intellectual work that's outside of the academy. I think I've learned the most from people who aren't, sort of trained and processed academics, in the Free South Africa movement, young people who, when I met them, I kind of read more widely than I had, and were just super sharp and smart, but many of them hadn't finished formal university training. So just to be humble about all that, I think is part of the thing, and not to be skeptical of the strictures that come with kind of professional mandates. Don't care about your subjects, be objective, don't be an advocate. These are the sort of markers of the way that we get captured and contained within the academy in ways that prevent us from serving the movement and our people.
Yeah. Yes, the academy, it's like, being in it but not of it is, I think, definitely very important.
Right.
So I guess my final question for you is, like, what are some of the most pressing issues of our time that you're struggling and organizing against? And what type of society or world do you seek to build, or do you envision?
Tiny little closing question.
Right.
Yeah. Well, as I said with the Portal Project, I think the challenge of the movement for abolition of prison industrial complex, the climate justice movement, and the struggle for lack of a better term, economic democracy, that is challenging the ravages of racial capitalism in the 21st century. Those are the big questions. And the overall question that's situated in is, how do we understand 21st century racial capitalism? And we can't understand it simply by reading people who've been dead 100 years. It's not fair to them. It's not fair to us. It's not going to yield what we need. So I, have considered myself a socialist, but a critical socialist. That is, we know that many socialist movements have failed. Many socialist experiments have failed in various kinds of ways. So we have to do the heavy lifting to figure out this moment of late capitalism, of crisis in racial capitalism, marked by a whole number of things, including climate, but also the changing nature of exploitation and work, right? The financialization of capital. How do we understand that and develop strategies that match it for a society where we can collectively, have the things that we need, live in a peaceful, nonviolent environment? And I'm not talking about utopia, because I think we'll always be striving to make society better. But this current frame that we have, the current political economy that we live under, is draining us of our humanity and destroying the planet. And we have to find something different.
Yes, very, very small question indeed. But thank you so much for this very illuminating interview. I think, you're one of the scholars that many of us junior scholars kind of like try to model our career or take note of, trying to make an impact within the academy, train students, work with students, encourage them to be radical and outward facing of their own accord, but also to do things beyond the academy. So thank you so much for all that you do, and also for being here to talk with us today on The Last Dope Intellectual.
Thank you. Thank you for having me and for your kind words.
Y'all, so this is another new segment. Well, the other one wasn't really that new. It was just a remix of an old segment. But this is a new segment that we're going to do more. I'm calling it Top 5 Dead or Alive. And this is segments where me and Jab will list our top 5, or at least the top 5 that come to mind, of a given subject, topic, issue, theme, or happening in the world. And so today is going to be Jab, and he is going to list his top 5 favorite segments from different LDI episodes. And you'll recall that this came from, I made the comment at the, at the end of one show, like, you always say every show was a great show. And then I said, you might have to rank them one time. And so this is sort of riffing off of that. So number 5, what you got?
So that is true. It was hard to determine what would be the best show. So I did in this first version sort of cop out and go by segments. Coming up with the whole show, comparing them as entire shows, is very difficult. So my number 5 is somewhat equally a cop out that I promised would be the case, which is all the writing segments, all the writing workshop segments are my top, my number 5 top 5. I really do love hearing you talk about the process, the workshopping, where you are in the all that. So so that's my number 5. I think it's okay. Yeah, easily. Yeah, go ahead.
It's interesting. Like, I always find that to be like the least relevant. And by the way, this feels like a very academic episode in general, but I'm like, don't nobody care about this, like whatever. But I'm glad that you like it, and maybe others find it useful too.
I hope so. And it could be a little academic thing, but I don't know. I don't know. I think they're incredibly valuable. So my number 4 is the Hood Communist segment that you did.
Yes, that was so good.
Not only was this in terms of the timing, and this is, of course, episode 9. This wasn't, in terms of the timing of their being banned and all of that, but it was just dope. The energy, the various approaches of both guests in the same vein, but their various energies at least. I mean, it was dope. I really liked that one. So that was my number 4.
I love that one too. Word to Oni and Salifu, which formerly known as Mac.
It's formerly known as. Oh, is that official? Mac. Okay, all right. FKA. All right.
FKA.
So number 3 for me was from episode 4, where you introduced us to someone who has come across a number of segments, and I've been very happy that that's happened, and is increasingly showing up on the morning show. And it was in episode 4 where you introduced us to Dr. Layla Brown and her discussion of Pan-African feminism and the energy, the transnational discussion. And your friendly banter and little shade you threw about her traveling and leaving you out. All that was, I think it was a great conversation. I really appreciated that one.
Yeah.
That's
Dr. Brown,
number
if you
3.
want more Dr. Brown, catch her on 2 Black Radical Brunches. So yeah.
That's right. Both Radical Brunches and your segment on the Remix Morning Show. Which was
Talk Black.
Forward more of that too. Talk Black. All that was very dope. She also showed up in our formation with on Black Studies with Dr. Swan and Ichile. So that was dope too. So
yeah.
Number 2 for me kind of relates to something else we talked about on this episode, and that was when you brought on Dr. Crystal Strong to talk about her work and her career, and both the grassroots in the streets and the academic. And from that, the piece you all talked about, we used in my class, and she came and spoke to my class after that as well. So that so I really, and she's strong. I mean, the puns are almost unavoidable, but yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And I'm actually going to Philly tomorrow for the Free Mumia actions. And so I definitely will be meeting up with Crystal, both at the Saturday action and just to kick it, because that's the homie. So
and then you might be running into somebody else up there on Saturday too. So
who, Layla? Because she going with me? Nah.
I was talking about me. It might be a little LDI BPM reunion in the streets.
Erica's gonna be there. Erica Keynes from Hood Communist and Black Lions Peace is we out there. So okay. All right. So your number 1.
My number one is because I just had so much fun doing it, and I can't wait to do more of these versions with you. Is our discussion of Ras Baraka and Black celebrity?
That was funny.
It was so much fun to play the tape and to vibe and react, and I just love doing that. And because of anybody who has that nerd tendency, who remembers Mystery Science Theater, that's been a fantasy of mine forever, to sit on the couch with my friends and my food and just hate on everything coming on TV and just make fun of it. Anyway, so that was my number 1. A very hard list to put together, by the way, because as I do enjoy these shows so much, but that's my top 5 so far.
All right. Can't wait till our next top 5 Dead or Alive, where we're talking about whatever it is that we talk about. But that was great. And thank you so much. You're a wonderful producer. I just want to throw that out there. Like, y'all don't know, behind the scenes, I be stuttering, messing up, especially when I'm trying to put my fingers up in terms of numbers. And Jared, he just smooths it all out. So I appreciate that.
Stay tuned for the members only blooper reel, though. We're going. That's
All right, y'all, another quick and dirty segment of what I'm on. And what I just want to think about a little bit or talk about is meaningful metrics. And so meaningful metrics, and I probably mentioned this before, but meaningful metrics is sort of, how do you measure your progress? Like, what are the ways in which how do you determine for yourself that you're moving something forward? And so I identified 3 that I'm actually using interchangeably as I move through Black Scare, Red Scare. So one is time as a measurement. And so part of what I'm trying to do is write for at least 30 minutes every day. Have I done it? No. But that is always my goal, to write for at least 30 minutes. And that sounds like a little bit, but even sometimes getting that 30 minutes in is very difficult, as I can attest to, because I haven't done it every day yet. But I am doing this sometimes, at least 30 minutes sometimes, right? but in another version of that is 2 Pomodoros. And so I do 30-minute Pomodoros. So 20 minutes or 25 minutes writing, 5 minutes off. And so sometimes I'll aim in a week to do 2 Pomodoros a day. Sometimes I'll aim for just 30 minutes. But time is one metric because sometimes just being in front of the computer, having your butt in the seat for a certain amount of time is a good way to measure how much progress you're making. So time is one measure. The second is word count. And so 7,500 words per week is like my goal from May until the deadline in September. 7,500 words a week, which is about 1,500 words if I'm writing 5 days a week, a little bit less if I'm writing 7 days a week. So that is another meaningful metric. And 7,500 words is a week is a metric that I actually got from Hakeem Adi, who will be on the show soon. That's what he writes, 7,500 words a week. So I was like, okay, I'm going to strive to do that as well, because then you can get a 100,000 word book done, I think, in about maybe 3 or 4 months, something like that. But so that's another meaningful metric. So for some people, word count is meaningful. For other people, word count is not meaningful because you can just be writing some bullshit. And so it doesn't really matter. And that's actually my position. I've been more towards time as opposed to word count. But, he was saying that 7,500 words a week is better than no words a week. And then you go back and edit it later. But so anyway, so for some people, word count is it. For me, I'm trying it, but it's not always the most meaningful for me. And then thirdly is sort of a bounded task. So it might be a section. It might be finishing 2 paragraphs. It might be working out just one really important sentence. It might be finishing a chapter, right? But being very specific about what that entity is that you're going to finish. So it's like, I am not leaving my seat, or like my writing day will be complete when I finish this one section on true Americanism, right? So that's another meaningful metric. And that, and that's not tied to either word count or time. It's tied to that like broader goal of what you're trying to accomplish. And so the upshot of this in general is just thinking about what's meaningful to you and like what is going to show to yourself that you made progress for that day, or that you're actually moving the project forward. And so it might change. Like for me, it shifts between time and word count, and sometimes by whatever entity I'm trying to complete. But so all these strategies are important to just, be motivated, stay motivated, and to just, continue to work on the project even when you don't feel like it, or to, and it's also a way to trick yourself, because if you're like, I only have to do this for 30 minutes, chances are once you get into your flow state, or once you sit down to do it, you're actually going to do it for longer. Or, you might say, okay, 75, or 1,000 words a day. And once you sit down, you might actually be like, okay, I'm at 1,000 words, but I have more to say. And so it's also a way to just sort of get yourself moving, get yourself going on something. So, that's it. That's what I'm on. So, Jared, do you have any closing thoughts?
I do. And again, they start with another great show. Great job. The conversation again with Professor Ransby, very important. That Black Radical Congress history is essential. Glad you all brought that up and got into some of those other things, also about writing also. So anyway, love the show. Congratulations. Number 12 in the books, baby. Number
12 in the books. And so sorry for y'all who are outside the academy. I do think that this is a little bit more sort of academic oriented, but I am an academic. It's the stuff I like to talk about, among other things. So anyway, that's our show for today. You could have been anywhere in the world, but you're here with me, and I appreciate that. I am Dr. CBS here with Doc Jab, and we are signing off.